Okay, this one will be quick and explain basically gravity and a lot of other things and why we're dividing things when we should look at the universe as a whole. When you look at protons and neutrons, I can never understand why they stick together if one is neutral and one is positive. But when I say positive, I've said before these things are comprised of three subatomic particles. A proton has a up, and a down quark. They're all called quarks. And a neutron has an up, down, down. Well, the thing with that is an up quark is plus 2/3 charge. So you'd have 2/3, 2/3, and then a down quark is negative 1/3 and is negative a third. And so a proton would be unbalanced because that would be negative 1 and 1/3, and then you just have 1/3. Well, before I get into that, if you look at a neutron and a proton, what is happening is these down quarks are attracted to these up quarks, and you would have an electromagnetic force and the strong nuclear force, which is the same thing as a different kind of gravitational pull. And so that's why protons and neutrons stick together. But this doesn't happen until you reach helium, because when you get things like, because what's happening is when you have a hydrogen, it only has a proton and an electron. It's balanced in nature. And so it doesn't have that extra stuff to balance to it. But when you have something extreme like fusion and the electrons are all the way on the outside of the magnetic field and there's a bunch of protons swimming around each other, then neutrons would obviously stick to the opposite side of a proton. Well, then when that basically element is created, helium, what's happening is now you have these two protons and these two neutrons, and then they come back together to mix with the two electrons that they were originally with, creating a full stable element outside of the fusion heat and the fusion reaction. And so the reason I said that is because I believe that's why they're heavier elements, because of fusion. And so that all makes sense, and to tie into why atoms actually work this way, because an electron is called a lepton and it carries a -1 charge. And if you look at that, a proton by itself would be up 2/3, which is 4/3, which would then turn into 1 and 1/3. Well, then you have a down quark, which has -1/3. If you take the electron that would be attracted to the up quarks, and then you add it to the equation, you would then have +1 and 1/3 and then -1 and 1/3, if that makes sense, creating a balanced equation. But then when you have something like fusion happening and all these protons are packed together, neutrinos or neutrons that would normally go through anything because they're a neutral charge, their quarks would then obviously be attracted by the protons minus the electron. Because if you look at a proton, I'll explain in a second what happens to an electron when fusion happens. But essentially this would explain why anomalies like the universe are being built the way they are. Because like I said, once you take away the heat of the fusion, this particle has then been fused together and now would take that same heat to break it apart, so to speak. And so I brought that up to say this, right? What happens to an electron when a proton goes through fusion? During fusion, electrons are freed from their atoms to form a plasma where they move independently of the nuclei at extreme temperatures and required for fusion. The nuclei have too much energy to hold their electrons, so the electrons become separate. So then they call it a soup, but it's almost like a hold on. Do freed electrons form large fields? Yes, they create. So essentially, like, okay, I'm gonna show you something with the sun real quick. The hydrogen wall. And while they talk about quantum entanglement, and if you don't believe that particles are connected throughout galaxies, you're about to find out. The hydrogen wall is a theoretical structure at the edge of the solar system where uncharged interstellar hydrogen atoms build up due to the pressure of the solar winds. So then you have this huge force field of random hydrogen particles right? So I might be mixing a couple of things, but I don't think I am. So, okay, you guys will ask why magnetic fields. Magnetic fields. You guys will ask why, oh, Jesus Christ. You guys will ask why planets have rings around them, right? And asteroid fields, and why black holes have that fire around it. So look at this magnetic pole, or look at these poles. If you notice, there's a circly field on top and a circly field on bottom, which would create an axis where everything is pushed to. That push is then spent around while orbiting like the orbit. So then that's essentially why I think rings around planets. It all works at the micro and macro level, which is the same reason why I think that the electron clouds and spins and orbits the way it does. It's all magnetics. It's literally all tied together with different names. And so that's just food for thought. It's literally one big electronic charge. And I tried to explain this before. Let me see if I can explain this a little better. The Earth has a charge, right? We'll say the blue part, we'll say a part of the proton is the Earth. And we'll say the cloud that's attracted, the cloud that's attracted around is the entities that are being attracted to that, right? Well, why is this happening? I'm going to try to explain the best I can. Whenever you record an electron, there's only a dot there. But whenever you look at the whole electron, there's a field around it, dust and all kind of stuff. Just like atmospheres, just like all kind of macro to micro. What I'm saying is, I believe that's what gravity is. So essentially, I'm not going to get into the negative charge. I'm going to say, let's say the iron in the earth is creating a huge charge. And so things are flowing towards it, whether it's mechanical or an actual electric charge, like solar winds versus magnets. So what I'm saying is, then also, I am doing some stuff on the inside of me. There's a bunch of protons in me. And then I have electrons. Those electrons, I believe, around me are what magnetize me towards the positive energy in the middle of the earth. That's where I believe you get positive and negative ideas of charges. The earth has a huge charge. I have a lesser charge. But because of my lesser charge, I have electrons around me that are attracted to the greater charge of the earth versus being repelled electron versus electron. Plus, a lot of the electrons that we experience from earth are in the atmosphere, so to speak. Okay. Earth's electrons in the magnetic field. Right? So, traps and guides energetic electrons. So when you see things grinding to get into the earth and it's catching on fire, because you're experiencing friction from electrons that are like each other, but also you're experiencing friction from other things. That's simplifying it. But you're also being attracted by the protons, or you're experiencing the electric charges friction against each other when you enter the field. But those same charges are what's being pulled down to the Earth's positive magnetic energy, if that makes sense. That's just a theory in my mind. That's why the electrons in the atmosphere don't burn us like they do here. But also people will say it's because of friction. Well, neutrinos, okay. Neutrinos going through all matter. Sorry, I have fat fingers. Neutrinos going through all matter. How is that possible? Why don't neutrinos get burnt up? Now, when I'm saying these things, of course, I might not be the smartest man on the planet. Of course, I'm not a traditional scientist that reads textbooks all the time. But from my perception, I believe a lot of micro to macro, and we are giving them different names and ideologies when it can all be one, like string theory. Even string theory has its problems. But I honestly believe that if you have a system or a universe with particles, and then those particles create a charge or something, they're going to attract other particles with different charges because those different charges have a negative aspect to them. a lesser charge. It's almost like, think of oxygen going from high to low. Oxygen, when it's all compressed, wants to go somewhere else where there is a different charge. Why is that? Because the state that it's in, if not energized, is not appropriate for it. All right, so I don't know. Take from that with you. If you take one thing and create the speed of light from the stuff I say, cool. And if everything else I say is rubbish, fine. But I'm just giving you all, from my aspect, some knowledge, because I think even the idea of black holes, I think that's a huge field around it that's so energized that it collapses all matter into its fields, or the ring around it, so to speak. And the radiation that escapes is what you would call energy that's not attracted to those fields. Radiation, or energy that's not compliant. So my old lady's home. She's going to want us to smoke some cigarettes, watch cops, and talk about her day. And I'm okay with that because she does amazing things for me. And P.S. I love you all, whether you're a man or woman, but she is wildly jealous. So have a good day. Hello, everybody. I was actually making a science video talking about quarks and their charges and how protons and neutrons are actually attracted to each other, because at one point you have two downs and an up quark, and at another point you have two ups and a down quark, and even those ups and downs would all be attracted to each other, creating the strong nuclear force and all this other stuff, and dealing with fusion. But I did what most humans do, and I started thinking about positrons and electrons, because they're both leptons. And interesting enough, in nature, I know a lot of people think about like charges and why don't protons and electrons collapse together, which is a whole thing. But I thought to myself, what would happen if you took a positron and collided it with an electron? And what happens is, a positron, when they meet with an electron, they annihilate each other, converting their mass into energy and producing two gamma ray photons. These photons are created with equal energy and fly off in opposite directions to conserve momentum. The process is called electron-positron annihilation. The electron and positron cease to exist, and their mass is converted into, according to Einstein's equations, E equals mc squared. Well, there's a reason why this is interesting, actually, because those are two gamma rays that are let off. And if you know anything about energy and what a gamma ray is, and so the energy of each two photons is equal to half the total energy of the electron-positron system, which is 511 keV. The energy is released as high energy gamma rays. So what did I do in my mind as a human, as most of us do? I typed in, what if you took billions of positrons and touched them with electrons? When billions of electrons and positrons collide, they will annihilate each other, releasing pure energy in the form of two gamma ray photons for each pair. This process is extremely energetic and happens almost instantaneously, converting the mass of the electron and positron into two high energy photons, as shown at this institute and these other sensors and whatnot. So then what do? I say, oh, can we farm these things like positrons and electrons and woo woo woo? And some radioactive isotopes like sodium-22 naturally emits positrons, so salt. So yeah, man, there we go. We got the newest Einstein. I do got crazy hair, but I'm finna release the video where I was just talking about quarks and stuff, because what I think honestly is happening when fusion happens is you got all these protons which have a certain amount of quarks, and then when they touch each other, one becomes a neutron. It's called beta decay or something like that. And what's actually happening is, at that energy level, it can't be sustained, and so you're seeing basically a proton decay into a neutron, because those charges of up and up and up and up cannot sustain each other. Well, then you get the neutron, and then they collide together to create deuterium, or a higher level elements. When that happens, Then you have this happen enough times where it becomes a full stable element, hydrogen. Hey, there's the kitty on my front porch. Hey, Comet. And so a lot has to do with these subatomic particles and getting even deeper. And in that video, I did say, what if there were even smaller particles with charges that held the protons and the neutron? And then I go digging even further, and this already exists. Man, this is so interesting. It just keeps going deeper and deeper until one day I'll get to a point where we're not able to divide yet, right? So yeah, there's the newest H-bomb with the photons and or the positrons and the create flashbangs. That's probably what a flashbang is.